Imagine walking with Jesus on earth for 3 years. Can't you just hear the words coming out of his mouth? I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. You saw his miracles. You saw him healing the sick, raising the dead. You even saw his kindness as he touched a man with leprosy. The disciples had never seen a man like Jesus before. He was not an ordinary man. He was the God-man. I want to take you back to the Last Supper, the night in which he was being betrayed. He was eating with his disciples and said, "One of you will betray me." Peter, in typical fashion, said, "Lord, I will lay down my life for you." Jesus looks at Peter and says, "Before a rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times." We will come back to Peter in a minute. It was Judas who was going to betray Jesus. We rewind the story a bit. Let's read Matthew chapter 26, verse 14 together. Then one of the 12, Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and said, "What are you willing to give me to betray him to you?" And they weighed out 30 pieces of silver to him. From then on, he began looking for a good opportunity to betray Jesus. So we come back to the Lord's Supper, and Jesus looks at Judas and said, "What you do, do quickly." John tells us that Judas left immediately, and it was night. In the book of John, the word night is normally used as a metaphor for unbelief. So Jesus goes to pray in the garden. And Pastor Robert shared a video earlier about that. I challenge you to go and look at it if you haven't seen it already. But after Jesus finished praying, Judas walks up with a crowd of soldiers. The betrayal is complete. Why did Judas betray Jesus? 30 pieces of silver. How does that make you feel? It is a great time to ask ourselves a question. What in your life is more important to you than Jesus or his commands? What are your 30 silver coins? Judas is distraught. He realizes what he has done. He goes and tries to return the money back, and then he ends up hanging himself. So sad. You see, the problem with Judas was his unbelief. What about Peter? We pick up the story in Luke chapter 22, verses 54 to 62. Having arrested him, that being Jesus, they led him away and brought him to the house of the high priest. But Peter was following at a distance. After they had kindled a fire, that fire was a charcoal fire. This word charcoal fire is only used 2 times in the New Testament. I'm going to light a charcoal fire right now. And I know that you're not here with me, but can you smell the charcoal burning? It has such a unique smell to it. So we go back to the text. After they had kindled the fire in the middle of the courtyard and had sat down together, Peter was sitting among them. And a servant girl, seeing him as he sat in the firelight and looking intently at him, said, "This man was with him too." But he denied it the first time, saying, "Woman, I do not know him." A little later, another saw him and said, "You are one of them too." But Peter said, "Man, I am not." Second denial. After about an hour had passed, another man began to insist, saying, "Certainly, this man was with him, for he is a Galilean too." But Peter said, "Man, I don't know what you are talking about." Denial number 3. Immediately, while he was still speaking, a rooster crowed. the Lord turned and looked at Peter. And Peter remembered the word of the Lord, how he told him, before a rooster crows today, you will deny me 3 times. And he went out and wept bitterly. Can you relate to Peter? You mess up and you know that you messed up. But this was not the end of Peter's story. Right after Jesus told Peter earlier that he was going to deny him 3 times, do you know what the next verses in the book of John is? John chapter 14, verse 1 and 2 are the next 2 verses. And it says, do not let your hearts be troubled. Believe in God and also believe in me. In my Father's house are many dwelling places. If it were not so, I would have told you, for I go to prepare a place for you. Peter, Jesus said, you will deny me 3 times, but don't be troubled. Believe in me, Jesus says. So we, just like Peter, are going to fail Jesus sometimes. But are we going to be like Peter? Or are we going to be like Judas? You know, the second time the word charcoal fire is used in the New Testament is after the resurrection of Jesus. You know the story. Peter is fishing. Jesus is on the beach with a fire cooking fish. What kind of fire? A charcoal fire. So Peter jumps out of the boat after they catch this fish and he goes to Jesus. And Jesus asks Peter this question: do you love me more than these? Do you love me, Peter? Do you love me, Peter? And 3 times Peter said, yes, 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 you know I love you, Jesus. You see, I think Jesus was saying, do you love me more than these fish? Or we can say to Judas, do you love me more than these coins? And he can say the same to you. Do you love me more than these? What is your these? God bless you.